we might get a start on. Thanks for everyone for coming. My name's Sam Summers. I'm a bachelor in Gubby Man, and I work with the Kuril Dhagun team. And yeah, obviously welcome to Kuril Dhagun, the place with the water at. So I know I can see a few familiar faces that have been here before, but for those that are new, we welcome you. The first, before I do anything, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners, both past, present and emerging, and we're eternally grateful to be able to hold these kinds of events on this land. And you know, this is one of my favourite places in this part of Brisbane, so it's really special to be able to do this. So this is part of our Sporting Great Showcase, which we launched back in March, I think. And tonight we have the honour of speaking with Dr. Anita Heiss and her book. Oh no, it's related. Yeah.
I'm not usually related to anything to do with sport.
And her book, Our Race to Reconciliation, which I'm sure most of you are aware is Reconciliation Week next week. So we're really honoured to have Anita here tonight, and this isn't the first time you've been here, but it's great to have her here. I'll introduce her a little bit, but I'll let her do the storytelling. But Anita is an extremely successful cross-genre author, for those that don't know her. She's also a member of the board at the State Library of Queensland, and she is then ambassador for the Indigenous Literacy Foundation. And she asked me to throw this in at the end. She's a budding runner as well. Embarrassingly, no. I'll let her tell the story a bit, but I sort of wanted to read a little bit of the blurb from this book. And so, for those of you that haven't read it, I have, as you can see where the bookmark is, I have done a bit of homework. But I'll read it out for you now. It's 2000 and the Olympics are going to be held in Australia. In a year full of surprises, enthusiastic runner Mel finds out that her hero Kathy Freeman is coming to talk at her school, and her family is heading to Sydney. It becomes an unforgettable journey to corroborate 2000, bringing together all Australians as they march and sing to celebrate Australia's Indigenous heritage and to acknowledge past wrongs. So I've nearly finished it, and it's great. But I did have a question to start off with. This story reminds me a hell of a lot about my childhood, and it talks a lot about the main character Mel and the twin brother Sam taking the trip to Sydney to be part of that walk across the Harbour Bridge in 2000. I visited many of those places that you talk about in that book, going on trips to see my own family in Sydney. And I can remember 2000, I was in Sydney for 2000, and I can remember the Olympics and Kathy Freeman winning her gold. But I'm interested to find out what your recollection of that, important moment in time was, and how that inspired this story as well.
Mangagu Samuel, Yurjumurang, Yurdi Anita Heiss, Baladu Raju Gilam. Pay my respects to the traditional owners of country here, and it's wonderful to be back at Kuril Dhagun in this very special sacred place, which is just wonderful for sharing stories. 2000. Can I ask people who, if you remember where you were when Kathy Freeman won gold? Do people remember? Was anybody there by chance? Because I've done some. Yeah, there's always one in the audience. Were you a volunteer or were you? So it's wonderful. So most of us have with my vintage. So were you born? I'm 50, and I do this in schools, and kids have heard of Kathy Freeman, but they don't. You were 7. Show off. So So many of us who are my vintage remember where we were and what we did. I was in Canberra working on, I think I was working on my PhD at the time with my family, and we were in their home out at Corwell. We're sitting around the tiled floor, we're sitting there watching the race. Many of my friends were at the stadium. And so we watched the race together, and all the excitement with that, it's gone in 2 seconds. And what's interesting about being here tonight, as I was telling Samuel, is when I was writing this book, I wrote thousands of words of this book in kuril dhagun, and I sat in that little space in there, watching the video of the race over and over again, so I could document on the page the flashes that you could see in the stadium, what the commentators were saying, the visuals, what Kathy's face portrayed, and so forth. And I show that clip when I do school visits. So I say to kids, we watch the clip a couple of times, and the first time all they need to do is watch it and then talk about, describing what she looked like, what they imagine she's thinking, what they imagine she's feeling, and what they imagine it would be like to be in that space. And so we can write around those sort of things. And then we talk about the story and saying sorry and reconciliation and friendship and so forth. But what I thought I'd do tonight was I thought I would read the scene in the book where the family are watching. So the family live up in Ipswich. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure, I don't know what made them choose Ipswich at the time. And I talked about this book down in Logan, and they're like, why wasn't it in Logan? Why don't you write Logan Green? And sure. But what's the thing? The baton was in Ipswich. The baton the relay went to Ipswich, and so forth. So that's one of the reasons why the story is set in Ipswich. And it's also like all I want is to try and put on the map places that people may hear about or see in the media that never actually go to. So one of my novels is set in Deniliquin. Have you heard of Deniliquin? It's the home of the World Ute Muster. Like, who would know that if you hadn't been there? And I love Deniliquin, and they had a really strong reconciliation group years ago. So I set some of my story of Paris Dream in there. So this is set in Ipswich. I might need you. And so this is how I've translated what I watched in various videos in that room, clips, YouTubes. The camera is mainly, this is the voice. Obviously this book is written for kids 8 to 12 and so forth. So it's the voice of, and I have done other work since it's really currently how my characters are. I think you've read it recently, how old are they're 11. Okay, they're twins. So there's the two characters, Mel and Sam. They are, I had one character originally, it was going to be the girl Mel who wants to be like Kathy Freeman, and this is her. Her nana makes a full bodysuit. It says FBG Flash Black Gordon because her name's Mel Gordon. But I auctioned off the character names for charity to give the money to the ILF, and 2 people bought character names. So I created these twins, which is fine because it's all good. Okay. The camera is mainly on Kathy, and I can see how focused she is. I wonder if she is praying or talking to herself in her head. She takes a couple of big breaths and then claps her hands. I wonder if they are nervous claps. I feel so nervous. I clap my hands in support. Trish does what I do, and Dad looks at us both and laughs. I feel sick, Sam and I both say at the same time. We just look at each other like we always do. I can't imagine how sick Kathy must feel. When the starter gun fires for the race to begin, there is the biggest roar in the stadium and in our house too. The telly man says about 111,000 people are watching live, and it looks like every single one of them is taking a photo because thousands of flashes are going off on cameras every second of the race. The telly man is saying other people's names as he calls the race, and I see other athletes there running in their lanes, but I'm only looking at my hero. The other runners are blurry to me because they don't count in my world. But they are the reason that Kathy is the best. They are pushing her to be better, to run faster. Without them, there is no race. I know that. Her legs are running faster than any legs on any human in the world ever. So I reckon, and I can't imagine anyone is going to catch her. Freeman is going strongly, the TV guy says, and I watch Kathy get even faster. And it looks like she's sprinting for her life as if she'll die if she doesn't cross the line first and fast. This is a magnificent performance. She is a legend. She has charged home to win gold. This is a famous victory. And there is another huge roar in the stadium, and it seems like an even bigger roar in my house, and we're all jumping up and down, and I'm almost crying. Sam even gives me a hug, which is a nice kind of hug, which he never does, so it's like a miracle. Trish is her best friend who's got a crush on Sam. Trish is looking at him wanting a hug too, but I know that's never going to happen, so I give her a hug. On the telly, all you can see is Aussie flags and Murray flags and green and gold streamers and people clapping their hands in the air, and everyone looks happy, really, really happy. I think every Aussie here is proud of Kathy and being Australian. It looks like the unity Mum always talks about is all there at the Sydney Olympic Stadium. Everyone's hugging each other like it's New Year's Eve, and they've all won the lottery at the same time. People are really, really happy, as if Australia is one big family at Christmas time and there's no fighting and reunions, and Kathy is like the cousin who brought us all together. Shh, Dad says, we need to watch what happens. Sorry. Next, we all turn back to the TV and Kathy pulls the hood off her head and she sits down on the ground as the other runners walk over to congratulate her. I can't even imagine what it must feel like. She sits there for a while, getting her breath back, and then she gets up and starts walking around the track. She's barefoot and she's got the Murray flag and the Australian flag, and she's doing a lap of honour. She's walking and there's heaps of huge cameras in front of her taking photos, and she nearly trips over one fella. Then she does this little skip kind of dance thing, and the crowd loves it, and so do I. I stand up and have a go too, and I've got Nana Flora's little Murray flag also. When it's time to present the medals, the crowds are still going nuts. Kathy gets up first in her official tracksuit, which is green pants and yellow jacket, and she has the biggest, happiest smile of pride. She waves to everyone at the stadium, and everyone waves back and cheers and whistles. It's like a big party, and we are kind of there, but also having our own party in our lounge room. An official goes up and hands her some flowers. Mum calls them waratahs. And then they put the medal over her head, and everyone goes nuts again.
Yeah, thanks for that. That was a really good insight to the book, and I suppose I can remember watching it, but I probably didn't really understand the significance of it when I was 7 years old. But I certainly experienced a lot of those things that Mel talked about.
Sorry, just because I didn't really preface the story. Leading on what you're saying, like for me, watching that over and over again and knowing lots of non-Indigenous Australians who also were just cheering on Kathy as an athlete, but the pride it brought to our people, and all my friends who went to the stadium, they all had Koori flags, because they're Kooris, they all carried Aboriginal flags and so forth, and the weight that must have been on his shoulder from so many people wanting her desperately to win, aside from as an athlete just wanting desperately after all those years of training to get to that place, I can't imagine the weight on her shoulder to perform in that evening. But for me, what happened to get to this book was I was approached by Scholastic, who were doing a new history series, and they wanted something on reconciliation. And the reality is, history is every minute up until 5 minutes ago, and while people have said to me, oh, 2000, that's not very long ago, it's actually 18 years ago, and that is history. And so I said, oh my goodness, we can do Kathy Freeman. I'd already started running. I started running late in life, so I was about 45 when I started long distance running. So I thought, she's a hero of mine. We can do the bridge walk. We can do, I was moving to Brisbane, so I'd like to do it in Brisbane. Kathy's actually from the state of Queensland, and we can weave it all together. And for me, I just thought, here's a great opportunity to look at the way sport brings the nation together, mostly brings the nation together. Talk about reconciliation. It's relatively contemporary. Young kids today in schools do know who Kathy Freeman is. And I always start with who likes to run and who likes to run fast or short and so forth, so that we can connect through the love of sport, running and so forth like that. So we have the two characters who are the twins. Sam is Sophia, and Mel is dark, so he has to, you know, part of the story looks at, you know, this issue of identity that is non-stop for Aboriginal people every single day of our lives. And, you know, so I can weave into the classroom conversation around the fact that, you know, he's a brother and sister, different shades, and Sam says, well, Mel was in Mum's tummy a bit longer, so she cooked a bit longer, so she's a bit burnt, and he manages those situations quite well. But it does highlight the way in which teachers today have to deal with those sort of conversations and statements in the classroom and deal with them appropriately. You know, when I went to school, 30 years before the war, these conversations weren't dealt with in the classroom at all. So the idea for the book was saying, how do we create a story that kids can relate to through sport and idols and heroes, while also providing an opportunity to have conversations around some difficult issues like reconciliation and so forth. And I was actually in Austria when that march happened, so I had to rely on, I had done research back in 2001, oddly, for the City of Sydney, their website, and I've done some radio interviews around that March of Reconciliation. So I had to rely on other people's memory and documentation for that particular march, and watching again lots of footage, but also had to rely on people who marched up here in Brisbane. Did anyone here do the march? It was over the William Jolly Bridge? Yeah, so I heard it was massive, and that was a little bit later, so I put that in there as well. So I had to rely on other people's, my friends' experiences of being there on that day, and documentation on that as well. This is all over the shop, so there's no structure. But as a writer, I am a plotter, and I map the entire book out. And that's my suggestion to you all.
Yeah, that's good, because I've got questions, but you can keep going with it. You probably have already answered it, but the characters of Mel and Sam, are they based on actual true stories or about real people?
So while I auctioned those character names, they're not real people. I did try to weave in aspects of each of those real people's lives. So Sam is a real young person, and he goes to school, and so I know that he loves cricket, and I asked him his favourite fruit and all those sort of things, so I could weave in elements of him in there, because they paid $700 for this character name. So it buys a lot of books at the ILF, let me tell you. And so, and Mel is a school teacher, and it's so funny because I emailed her a whole lot of questions about favourite food and everything that I could weave into the novel, and she emailed back something like, favourite drink, margaritas or something. And we're really good friends, so we're like, have you got like a soft drink? I think she was suggesting to 11-year-olds that the best way to become happy friends was drink margaritas. Anyway, so, but I tried to weave in, and you know, for me that's also the joy of being creative, trying to weave in some real things, and a lot of my fiction is actually faction, because obviously all the stuff around the war and Happy Freeman and the Olympics, all that's real. And all I've done is try and use those as settings and a path for getting, I guess, messages in a story that kids might be hopefully interested in. So they're not any real characters. Something odd. So book week. Who's Mel Goes? Sam goes as Eddie Gilbert, and this is really interesting. So Eddie Gilbert, you'll know, bold double grabbing out for a duck. So he goes as Eddie Gilbert. So now there's a bit of artistic license here, because that book wasn't out at the time, the Eddie Gilbert book. But you say, okay, that's a bit. But there is a book, because I've read it, and so he's holding the book, and Eddie Gilbert's really dark, and that's where the George. He's the bully in the class. He's like, you know, you don't even look like Eddie Gilbert. How can you come as an everything? That's where that conversation comes from. Oh my God, who did she go as? Well, she must have got. She went as Katie Freeman. Did she was Katie Freeman? Because there were books about Katie Freeman. Oh my goodness. Samuel. We need to edit that out of whatever. We need our post to look like he's all over my work. Because I'm not.
Yeah, that was really good because to hear that, because it sort of shows how you think about your writing, and there's actually a little bit of a segue to the next question, which is great. So I guess probably stepping back a little bit, how did you? I guess more for the people that haven't heard you speak before. How did you start off your writing career, and I suppose how have you developed your writing style since then? Yeah.
So, I never, as a child, imagined that one day I would be sitting in a kuril dhagun talking about being an author, or that I would travel around the world talking about books and writing. I wanted to be a nun when I was in primary school because I liked the look of the convent, and then I felt like I had my own room. This was like a vibe. Room, and it looked really nice when I went to school. And then I realised, couldn't have jewellery and makeup, probably couldn't have my own television, couldn't have a boyfriend, I could be a nun now. I wanted to be Ginger from Gilligan's Island. Do you remember Gilligan's Island? But I was Mary Ann, so I had the plaits. I was a tomboy, played footy and cricket in the street, tennis and so forth. I wanted to be an air hostess. So I had a reading age. I had a reading age of 16 when I left primary school, but we didn't have books at home. Back in the day, back in the day, we had a bus that would come around, a really old bus, and you would get on the bus and you would borrow the books, and the bus would come back a month later and you take the books back. And so I didn't come from a home with books. My father would occasionally read a Western when we go away to the farm, and my mother still reads the Bible. So we didn't have books. We didn't have money for books, basically. And so I wasn't a lover of literature. Even in my undergrad years, I read indexes of books, so I'd just go right in Aborigines and read those pages. And I learned to love literature. So I had no idea I was going to write books. But what triggered it was when I was at university doing my undergraduate degree, every single book on the shelf that I got that anything to do with Aboriginal Australia was written by a non-Indigenous person. Other than Kevin Gilbert and Udru Nunakul, who was then Kath Walker, there was very, very little on any of our curriculum or our reading guides that was written by Aboriginal people. And one book I got off the shelf in 1990s, or maybe 1990, I was doing my honours, was uniquely titled Australian Aborigines, and it was written by someone who'd never been to Australia, and it was based on letters from someone in New South Wales, a Newfoundland in New South Wales, who would write letters back to this fellow in Britain, which is quite common. There were lots of books that were published based on journal entries and correspondence. And so he'd write, today we did this with the natives, and today we did that with the natives, and he'd send a letter off. Anyway, one day, and I've told this story here before, so apologies if you've heard it. One day, 5 Aboriginal men took this fella hunting, and they left him for a short period of time, and only 4 came back. So he assumed they ate the 5th one, right? As you would. Right? You all go have your scones, and I come back, I'm going to think, cannibals. Which is what he thought, and we laugh because it's insane, like it's insane. But he writes a letter back to Britain saying, the natives, the cannibals, based on this one moment in time and his perception of what happened. Ladies and cannibals, I went hunting, yada yada yada, they ate the 5th one. 100 years later, I took the book off the shelf at the University of New South Wales Library, reading for the first time that there was cannibalism in Aboriginal communities, which I'd never heard and didn't hear again until Pauline Hanson. That you know that story. So, what I realised is we die and we take our opinions with us, but the written word lasts forever. And how many people have read that book and thought that to be true, believed that to be true? It's a non-fiction book in the Australian history section. And so I thought it made me think about perspective and how the recording of history is completely subjective, and that the way in which the colonisers remember and record history is significantly different to the way in which the colonised remember and record history. And if we came back here tomorrow every single one of us, the kids as well, I said, let's report the history of last night. I guarantee every single person in this space would report it differently. There are facts you can't change. It's personal. In very cool State Library of Queensland. It's about 17 degrees. I am fabulous. There are facts that even the way I remember tonight will be different to the way, because it's about perspective. Some of you will remember it emotionally, some of it will report it chronologically, some of you will report it based on a sense of what you hear or the setting and so forth. And so what I always try to say to my students is be conscious of the lens that people are writing through, because we write through different lenses. So I would say, oh, you're saying you can't read books by the iPad. I'm not saying that at all. But if I want to learn about farming, I'm going to buy a book by a farmer, not a stockbroker. And nowhere in the world today would it be okay for a student to go into the library wanting to do an essay on the women's movement and only cite books by men. It would not be acceptable. It would not be expected. I think we need to be looking at it in that way. So what was the question? Oh, how did I get into writing? Listen, I want to be out here at 7:30 like you. Okay? So I wrote a book called Sacred Cows. It was just meant to be a satirical social commentary, making the point that, when we look at white Australian culture like skippy and the backyard barbecue, we can make fun of that as well, just as Aboriginal society and culture had been measured by Eurocentric values and denigrated through literature. And I thought, well, we can do the same thing. So I wrote this book, just taking the mickey out of Skippy and Vegemite. Vegemite, at the time I wrote the book, so the labels read black and yellow, with a bit of white, it's a token. But the company, Kraft, at the time was owned by Peter Stuyvesant, which was American owned. So this great symbol of Australian culture was not even owned by an Australian company. Throw another shrimp on the barbie. Do you remember that ad?
Yeah.
You don't. Anyway, throw another shrimp on the barbie. Came out in about 1995. So Paul Hogan makes this ad for American television to lure them. My left side's best. To lure them to Australian shores. So all of a sudden, Aussies are throwing shrimp on the barbie. Now, prior to that advertisement, massive tourism campaign, Aussies didn't eat shrimp, they had prawns. Raw or covered in honey and sesame seeds at the local Chinese restaurant. That was the thing back in the day. All of a sudden, Aussies are throwing shrimp on the barbie because Paul Hogan makes an ad for American television. So that just told me how, in non-Indigenous Australia, culture is created and appropriated every day. And so I wrote that book. I never thought I'd do anything else. And then I worked on the Mohawk newspaper in Gunawaga, which is about 10 minutes outside of Montreal, and it was like a work exchange thing, and it made me become very interested in, so that newspaper, completely privately owned, completely Mohawk staffed, and then I went to the national native newspaper called Windspeaker, where the publisher, and I say native because that is the term that they used, the publisher was native, and the woman on the door was native, and the bookkeeper was native, and the 20 other staff were all non-native. And I ended up having an exchange with an editor about a story that I wanted to do on Indigenous games over there. And they said, well, nobody's going to be interested in that. And I'm like, yeah, your audience are Indigenous readers, and I don't know that you could be making that call. So it made me become interested in what our publishing practices were like back here, and I enrolled in a PhD purely to give me structure. So I didn't have that structure, I'd still be researching. And from that, I did that, and then I was asked to write my first novel, which is in a similar series to this, called Who Am I? The Diary of Mary Tully. It's about a young girl who was removed, and it's set in 1937, and then it just sort of grew from there. And now I'm just trying to find one genre that I could do well. And I need one. But did you know, Samuel, trivia that came out probably before you were born was that they say George Bull. The average human has a vocab of about 10,000 words, and George W. Bush has 5,000 words, and I have 5,000 words. They're different words, but it took me a while to accept that I don't have a very big vocab, and I used to every time. I don't know when I stopped doing that, but I did it for a very long time. And then, this isn't a good thing if you want to be a writer, to have a small vocab. But what I realised is that you write within your capabilities. And when I do workshops, particularly with old, people in my vintage, I remind them that it's about the story. Because a lot of people don't start writing because they're concerned about grammar and spelling, and all grammar and spelling is all fixable. That's why we have editors. All that is fixable. It's the story. So you might be the most eloquent writer in your class or in your group, but if you haven't got a story that's going to make you turn the page, then you've got a problem. So it's all snowballed, and now I'm just about to do. I think I've done 17 books, and they've been published in different languages. And I'm just working on a synopsis for an epic historical novel about heroism and homecoming in central New South Wales around the Gundagai, the Great Flood in Gundagai, where Yarri and Jackie went out and saved a third of the town from drowning over 3 days in 1852, and only last year the town of Gundagai unveiled statues to them. So I'd really like to write them into Australian literature somehow. So I'm working on another storyline for that.
Thanks for that. I'd be looking forward to reading that. Another question, I suppose, is sort of related to another novel that you wrote called Kicking Goals with Adam Goods and Michael O'Loughlin. Yep. Does everyone know who those two fellas are? I'm fairly sure you would. As most people would know, the sort of attention, especially Arlene's got. And in relation to Kathy, I suppose there was like a bit of pushback with, her carrying the flag on her back when she during her time. I suppose I want to ask you, do you think that reconciliation has a place in sport, given the weight of the issues that they've dealt with, in the aftermath of these things? And I suppose there's a part in the book there also that I read about George, the classroom bully, who talks about Kathy wearing the flag and not really understanding that, and sort of saying like, well, we're here to enjoy the sport, aren't we? And that's the main thing. So I guess that's what I want to ask you.
It's a really good question, and particularly so we're leading in now to Reconciliation Week and Indigenous Round for the AFL, NRL too. Have they done theirs, or they did nothing say the AFL? Next week, it's the Doug Nichols Round. Overwhelmingly, I will say, and I'm not really a sports person, although I do a lot of work with Hawthorn, and I'm hoping to do some work with the Swans Academy, some leadership with the kids down there. But overwhelmingly, I will say yes, that sport is a way of bringing reconciliation to reality, but also acknowledging the history of racism in sport. Mickey Winmar, 1993, that iconic photo where he lifted the shirt, I'm sure that still happens on the field. We only have to look at 2014, Adam Goods Australian of the Year, and the absolutely disgusting behaviour that he went through, and to see as Australian of the Year, and to see him leave the game in that way, it is a blight on this nation, really, whether you're a sports lover or not. And then, of course, back in '95, I think it was, Kathy carried the flag, and that ended up as in question time in Parliament. I think there has been great ground made in terms of the area. I got a phone call last week from an AFL club asking me to be on the Reconciliation Action Plan working group, which I declined because I was too busy but to see that clubs are actually trying to create policy. I see RAPS as policy. It's a policy document. You make a public statement you're doing something. There's division within our own communities about whether they're useful or not. I actually see them as a public document where organisations say, we will do this, and therefore they then have to do it, and it gives them a structure and a strategy to actually do that. I think, like Reconciliation Week, with these Indigenous rounds and so forth, which also have criticism within our own community, it does provide a focus just on culture, identities, pride and strength and identity and community, for that round. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And I was in Redfern for the night when the Rabbitohs won the grand final. Like that party went for days. And I saw, and I'm not a footy chick by any stretch of the imagination, but I saw, particularly around that time, the way in which that game brought people together. So because people from all backgrounds love that club, and it brings people together in a way that they might not normally spend time together. And that's what sport can do.
Yeah, and that's, I don't know if I've told you, but I'm a huge AFL fan, so it's Richmond Tigers, yeah. So, and of course, you guys probably know they do the big Dream Time match at the MCG, and that's a marquee thing that they do. And those two clubs do a lot of really good work with Michael Long and the Long Walk, which does happen in Brisbane as well. But yeah, no, that was really interesting here.
But the Lions have a rap in this is a really AFL town. The Swans have had theirs for a while. Leading the way.
I will leave some time at the end for questions, by the way. But this, yeah, and I mean, this is a little bit of a. Actually, I'll leave it till the end. I'll ask this question. I'll probably ask this one. Do you want to talk about some of the work that you do outside of your writing and with some of the other organisations and some of the marathons that you've run, or the ones?
Some marathons. There's lots of them.
Or the New York one, or you're training for the Gold Coast one at the moment. Is that right? Yeah.
It's midlife crisis. So some of the other work I do. So I'm a very proud lifetime ambassador of the Indigenous Literacy Foundation, with people like Jared Thomas and Justine Clark and Josh Pike and Deborah Cheatham, Miranda Taxel. Not Miranda Taxel. No.
Oh my goodness, the beautiful.
Larry thank you. Jessica Bowie. Just forget that. I know. I'm so jealous of it. Jessica Malboy is one of our ambassadors anyway. So I've just come back from the Tiwi, Melville Island, where we had every year the ILF do a book published, a literacy day at Millicapity School. So we've done a number of books with the kids in Millicapity, and then we go down to Tiwi College. And I hadn't been to Melville Island for 25 years, so that was really interesting to go back there and just work with the kids and see the joy that they have when it's like, okay, we can choose 3 books, because we take hundreds of books. You take 2 books for yourself and 1 for a sibling or a friend or whatever. So I've been running workshops with Aboriginal girls at Warrawa Aboriginal College in Hillsville. So we've got a book coming out that we launched on Indigenous Literacy Day, and those girls are from communities all around the country. It's a boarding college set up by Hillis Maris. Back in the day, Annie Lois-Peeler, many of you will know, she's one of the original Sapphires, and so she's the principal there now. And so I love the work that I do with the ILF. I manage a foundation part-time here in Brisbane called the Epic Good Foundation, and our core areas are closing the gap and gender equity, education, and just general health, and that's co-founded by 2 local Brisbane pharmacists, and I was just lucky enough to the universe brought us together, and I manage that for them. And next week, Celebrate Reconciliation Week, we have our third event called Kick On for Literacy, where we bring AFL and literature together. Or I've got a question for the audience, because we had a debate. Last year the debate was the ball is better than the book. So the AFL people argued for the book, and myself and Graham Simpson argued for the ball. It was hilarious. But next week we've got Archie Roach singing. We've got Archie Roach signed to make the guitar for auction if anybody's interested. It's got this debate. So it will be myself, Belinda Duarte, who used to run the Kuril Institute at Richmond, and was AFL Woman of the Year, Aboriginal woman, and Graham Simpson versus Campbell Brown, former Hawks player, David Lawrence, who wrote the Fox Swift books, and Tanya Hosh, who's head of the AFL Diversity. And the topic is, the locker room is sexier than the library. So obviously I'm going as a sex librarian. So I really need some one-liners if anybody's got any. So I'll be arguing that the library is sexier than the locker room. Did you know, I found out from the head librarian, state librarian today, that Casanova was a librarian. Who knew? Are we using that? So ladies, would you prefer Casanova or Warwick Kappa? And the debate is won. So I manage a foundation. So every year, one of our events is we do Kick On for Literacy, where we celebrate Reconciliation Week. We celebrate Sir Doug Nicholls Round, and we celebrate our partnership with the Hawthorn Indigenous Program, and we raise money for the Indigenous Literacy Foundation. Tomorrow I head to Canberra, and on Saturday morning I run 30 kilometres in 4 degrees. And I'm very nervous about that because I'm old and it's cold. It's very, very cold. So I'm training for the Gold Coast Marathon, which I'll be running to raise money for the ILF. And I was in New York last November. I ran the Outback Marathon last year in 33-degree heat, and for the last 5 kilometres used quite a range of profanities about how I would never run another marathon. And then I woke up the next day and said, I'm not really happy with my time. And so Stuart, who is co-founder of A Bit Good, he and Kathy took me to New York, and he ran the New York Marathon with me, and the IMP, Indigenous Marathon Project, crew were there, so I addressed them at the consulate and wished them luck and so forth. But I'm too old, you have to be under 30. So I'm pushing for an IMP Masters group, and I'll speak to them the day before there's a new group of 12, and they'll run the Gold Coast Marathon, and then some of them will head to New York this November. So, and this will probably be my last. They say never say never, because in New York I was really sick, and I was saying from about 18 kilometres every day, why am I doing this? And Stuart's much faster, so he's tweeting and Instagramming, and I said, text Kathy and ask her to explain to me why I'm doing this. So Kathy waited on the sideline of 2 different spots with the flag, and then I ran across the line. He ran ahead and waited for me to film me coming to the line, and I ran to him. And so it was pretty good. Yeah.
I'll probably have one more question for you before I hand it to the audience. And yeah, it is a little bit personal, but if you don't mind me asking, what's your personal views of reconciliation? I suppose it is a lot of things to a lot of people, and yeah, we all have different ways that we interpret it or see it. But I'm curious to know what your views are of reconciliation.
I usually script everything. Reconciliation Week equals more work for myself and blackfellas generally. Reconciliation. First of all, can I explain that I am a supporter of reconciliation because I want to live in a world of peace and respect, mutual respect. And I want our mob to be acknowledged for the contribution that we make to this society every single day in every sector of society. So, I have to be open to conversation, dialogue, change, sharing the journey and so forth. I haven't always been an advocate at all. And I couldn't understand when reconciliation as a policy was back in 1992. Does anybody remember? It was when the Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation sat in Department of Prime Minister in Cabinet in Canberra, and I was like, why do you have to have a policy that tells people to basically be nice to other people? So I was like, this is just a waste of money, why are we doing this, and so forth. And then I was living in the Gold Coast in 1996, and Jackie Huggins, who you all know, Jackie, she invited me to a women's reconciliation dinner in a venue on Vulture Street that was meant to seat 250 women, and they squeezed illegally 400, I think, women in this room because so many women wanted to come. So I'm sitting there going, I'll drive up because Jackie asked me, but this is just a waste of time, yada, yada, yada. And I'm sitting there, and I think I was the only black fellow on my table. And at one point, they asked all the non-Indigenous women in the room, and obviously most of them were non-Indigenous, to stand up. And they recited a pledge about bringing other women into the movement. And that night shifted my view of what was possible on the ground, and that there were genuine people at a grassroots community level across the community who wanted to make a difference and make a change. It shifted the way I saw reconciliation. And the interesting thing is, so we have the walk in 2000 and the documents handed over, and the process under John Howard is officially over. That's the end of any form of official Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation because we've done the process. However, reconciliation as a movement is probably the most long-lasting, successful movement that has ever been in Australian history. The March for Reconciliation was the largest march this country's ever seen. Bigger than Vietnam, bigger than GST, bigger than any other marches, was Australians coming together in every city saying, we want to live in peace, we want to respect Aboriginal people, we want reconciliation, and we believe an apology is due. So, Kevin, what's his name? John Howard spends 11 years in power, actively confusing people around reconciliation and the word sorry. And 11 weeks in, Kevin makes an apology, and I was in Canberra, my mother was in Parliament House, I was outside, and I was next to women, old women, crying with gratitude for their story and their histories finally being recognised. And that all came about as a part of the movement of reconciliation. So I think there are important moments in our history that are due to reconciliation. Paul Keating's Redfern Park speech, another pivotal moment in our history. So for me, it also means, my belief is that the heavy lifting needs to be done by non-Indigenous Australians, and to date, most of it's been done by us. But really, it needs to be done, and the carriage for reconciliation needs to be at the highest level by non-Indigenous people.
Awesome. Well, I might, being conscious of time, I might open up the floor to questions now. And if anyone has a question, I'll come around with the microphone if you want to ask Anita anything. So does anyone have a question that they'd like to ask? You, Lynette?
Oh, yeah.
How did you get the idea for your book?
It's a really good question. All right, so
How did I get the idea for the book? Okay. Well, I knew I liked running and I loved Kathy Freeman, right? So I go, okay, got to have Kathy in the somewhere. I knew it had to be about reconciliation, and I knew it had to be a book for young people, just like yourself. Although you are a bit younger and reading higher than the average kid, I know that. And then I just read lots of stories about Kathy Freeman, and I wove those. I started to get ideas. You know what I do? I look at people all the time. So I'm looking around here tonight, and I'm getting ideas for characters. Gentleman with his cap on there. Lady with different colour hair, blue or green hair. So I get my ideas and I look around and I listen to conversations.
Sorry.
You look brother, you want to ask a question? Make it easy.
And it's probably along the lines of like you mentioned about strange things, marks that happen, and there's a lot of news, but that's always there, and they want to see a change, and that at the same breath they say it's Indigenous people who are doing most of the different,
We are.
It's just, well, I suppose in one perspective it looks like it's, it's good to be seen to me. It's good to be, like, supposed to be able to like things that happen in generation. So, but, with, like, I suppose with, you do have,
They still exist.
yeah, they do.
Because you don't, as I said, I don't know how they, so that's not government.
Government data, is it? So somebody's, and I try to, no, I absolutely agree, and I get asked to do things all the time, and I've started pulling myself back from places because, my name gets used to do things, and it's the cosmetic stuff, I know what you're saying, so they want to do things, people want to do things that have a tangible cosmetic profile outcome, you know what I mean, and I know what you're saying, and I don't support that. It's like, the real change comes from policy, the real change comes from listening, and I said, the things that I see that are done well, because I don't want to use names here, the things that I see that are done well when Aboriginal people are asked for their opinion and people asking, listen and act on what's being said. And I think what's missing in the process is the listening. The whole Uluru Statement is a classic example. You asked us to go and do this thing, you come back with this, but you don't want to listen to the answer. So that is a classic example. Well, so why ask? Why don't you just tell us what you want? And so I think, but I try to look at because I wouldn't get out of bed every day if I just looked at the negative. So I try to look at what's working well and focus on that.
Oh, I think awesome.
And I think the difference is the feeling and acting. So most people go, we know the statistics, we know there's disadvantage, we know there's good people in every culture and every part of society, but it's the action. It's actually getting from knowing and thinking and feeling to, what am I going to do about that? You know what I mean? And sometimes they don't have to do very much.
No, absolutely. Like, I'm over kids, and throughout the student groups that are over there, and if I imagine that they're aligned with the regards to like the facility. The majority of students they go out to the community and they do stuff, and the first question is what do you want to see? And it's put them all disabled, like not going out there and saying, we're going to come and do this.
I met these gorgeous kids, young people, women, from QUT at the Sherbird Baramba Run, the Ration Shed Run, last couple of years ago. Well, we bumped cars in the car park, but and then I had to offer to go and talk to the class. And then they go around, they do a whole lot of things. This group of big up, I should know this, big on t-shirt. So they go around and do things. Big lift. These young students just want to go and do good things. I didn't do that when I went to uni. I went to uni bar. Played tennis. That's a question.
What's been the response to your book from the school group settings?
This book? Kids are generally happy that they're not in class. It's mixed. So there's kids that go, it's like anything. So we do creative writing generally. And I was actually up at Ipswich at the Ipswich Festival, so they were really excited because it's about their hometown and so forth, and they were learning stuff about their own history of Ipswich and so forth. But usually I've only got like 45 minutes with them, and I can see they're generally completely engaged, which tells me they're interested, and they're seeing Kathy Freeman run for the first time. So I can confidently walk out of that room going, well, they know one more role model. We've had a conversation about, because I asked them about saying sorry. He's got a brother or sister, he's sometimes not very kind to them. What happens if you have a fight with your friend? And what should you do? And then they understand that it's important to fix something that's broken. And we talk about, and I give them the example about an argument I had with my sister, and it wasn't a very nice argument. She sent me a text with a photo with two handbags saying, which would you prefer? Like, we've been fighting. Which would you prefer, the brown one or the black one? And I say to the students, so we had an argument, and I'm in the shop, sends me a text, what should I have said? And they're like, well, you should have picked one. And what did I do? I said, neither. This is not reconciliation. So we talk about how that's not the response when someone offers you an olive branch. And so we talk around apologies kind of and saying sorry in their everyday life, so that they understand that saying sorry isn't about being responsible for black fellas being removed. It's about understanding that someone may be upset or hurt and so forth. But yeah, I think I can walk out of that room confident that they have thought about something they hadn't thought about previously.
Just when you go into the community, what do you think is the one thing to get everything's about Indigenous literacy, but how do you get the young kids who don't want to be in class to actually love reading? Like, how do you get them young? And I'm talking about community,
Okay, so I can just tell you my own personal experience, just because I don't have the answers. If I had the answers, all that would be fixed. So I worked with some young Aboriginal men up in Katherine, in Jarman country, from different parts of town. And, some of them lived in the community in conditions that we see classically on television, and not conducive to study or sleep or homework or anything. And some of them lived in, suburban houses. So when I was going up there, we were going to do a book, I'm thinking, what am I going to get these young fellas who are 15 to 17, how am I going to get them to come every day? How am I going to do this? I showed them the first quarter of the AFL Grand Final of Hawthorn playing West Coast. They go, that goes for a long time. How does the quarter go for? So long, that game. It was boring. Anyway, I was at the grand final. Just thinking about when's it going to end. Anyway, so I was told that the first quarter was the most exciting quarter of that game. So we watched that. Their exercise was then to write, imagining what it would be like walking out onto the MCG with 90,000 people cheering you on grand final day, because they're all footy players, right, these young fellas. And all of them except for one wrote about being the winning team. Right? One fellow wrote about playing for West Coast, which is great, Then they went around and they read each other's stories, and the principal said to me that one of the boys had written more in one morning than he'd written all term. So it is about finding, and it's not rocket science, finding what kids are, when they're young men, what they're interested in and doing this, and then but what was extraordinary is I have a bit of a structure that's similar for all these workshops. So I got them to write about their special or sacred place. So I show them an image of a rock pool that I go to, and we go through the senses, and they wrote the most, I thought was quite personal. Like, someone wrote about going to his great-grandmother's house in WA, smelling her cooking a roast and all the family laughing. All these things that most teenage boys wouldn't share with the world. Someone wrote about sitting on the roof of the clubhouse overlooking the footy oval, and someone was, up at Torres Strait on the water's edge. And so they wrote about that. They wrote letters to their heroes. Someone wrote a letter to Muhammad Ali, who died died the next day. I know, it was unbelievable. So I left and some wrote to Martin Harmon, they wrote to Martin Luther King, they wrote to Buddy Franklin and Cyril Rioli and Luke Hodge, and Luke Hodge then launched the book at Hawthorn Football Club a couple of months later. So, and it is, I think it's about finding the things that young people are interested in. And it's not rocket science. Brown kids and see brown kids on the page. It's pretty basic formula. And so the books that are sent into communities are books that the communities choose. So we don't just send books. There's a list. Literacy workers on the ground work with people in the community, whether it's the daycare centre or the women's centre or the school, and they choose the books that are appropriate for their community.
Just a question about the island. My school just fundraising for the island girls concert for last year, and I was wondering how much of that
Really good question. What school do you go to? St. Peter's. You know Sam. You know that Sam Giles. Yeah. Did I meet you at the? I met you at the governor's place. Are you stalking him? Where's security? Where's security? That's a really good question. So the way that schools participate is, and you know this now, is that schools have great book swaps where kids bring in a book that they love to swap with another book and make a gold coin donation. And St. Peter's has done some fantastic stuff with their Cape Day sales and in the library there in middle school? You're in middle school? Yeah. And you had book swaps and so forth, and I think one year they raised about $3,000. It's a lot of money. And so I think last year we had about 20,000 school students participate in a great book swap. And in the past, we've had librarians go, oh, that'll never work. And then it's work, and they're astounded because what they see is kids talking about, because it's not just about raising money, it's about raising awareness about literacy and the importance of, role of books in our homes. And I went to one school, Kelvin Grove State School. They had so many hundreds of books that they had to do it in shifts throughout the day, and they even had a table of books for parents to come in. So the library does a really big book swap here on, I know they do Indigenous Literacy Day, but they do a big book swap out in the Knowledge Walk, they do it out there, and run by the CDCA as well. And so if anybody wants to do one, you can do it in your workplace. There's a law firm in Brisbane that are going to do one there, and so anybody can do one. You can do it just with your friends. Bring a book, swap a book, chuck a gold coin in. So on Rock Bottom Friday, we raised about $150 on the line out. And that buys more than a book pack, which has 12 board books in it for infants. So part of one of the big programs of the island is called Book Buzz, and it's about having our young infants have a relationship with books before they get to school. Because what we've found in communities, obviously there's no libraries, there's no necessarily book supply there, is that kids are arriving at school at the age of 5 and they've never had a book before. Now that was different in the 70s when I grew up. It should not grow up, should not be in Australia in 2018. That should not be the case. But there's in Canada, there's a friend of mine, Native American writer. He wrote a little young infants book, and the government bought. Every child born that year got a copy of that book. Like in the mother's maternity bag, they got it. How dead is that? I wish that someone would buy that one book to me. I wish I wrote the Gideon Bible. Which book do you wish? I wish I wrote the Gideon Bible. It's the most published book in the world. Maybe more than Harry Potter. Maybe more than Harry Potter. On that note, I don't wish I wrote the Gideon. Oh, you've got another question right after this one.
It's along the lines of I love music, and I've been through 2 transformations in my life from vinyl, and then I was making my CD. Now I'm like CD, and then they're going. So now I'm 80 on writing's going.
I have not read one book. I have not read one e-book. I'm a tree book girl. I know it's terrible the environment, but I just like the book. I walk up and down the plane looking at what people are reading on, and it used to be 50-50, but now it's pretty much everything's anyway. Except for me.
So on that side, if you're a more nutritionist,
Or just slow to get up with technology. No, I think there's something special about. There's something. I like the feel of a book. I like to have a book in the bath. I like to. Is it? What do people? Hands up if you're more of an e-book person. Or what about if you're 50-50? Bit of both. What if you just a book? What about a book? Well, do you know what? We are the minority. No, we're not the minority. We should have a library. Anyway. Yeah. You can't sign an e-book. Audiobooks, yeah. Who listens to audiobooks? Yeah, it's big. Lots of my friends that run, they say they listen to audiobooks. Yeah. You buy the hard copy. Was it awful? That's fantastic. So off you go. Download, purchase, deliver. I think we might end it there, Sammy.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming along, and we are a little bit out of time, but that's and it was really good to talk about this. I really enjoyed this book, and I'm a huge sports fan as well, so obviously it's something I'm passionate about.
Like for the reviews.
Yeah, I purposely saved the last few pages to finish tonight, so
Can we have a round of applause for Sam?
Yeah. We're really honoured to have Anita, and she's kind enough. We've got the library shop staff here, which have been fantastic in setting up some of Anita's titles over there. So if you'd like to purchase them, she's more than happy to sign some copies if
In
you'd
the
like.
spirit of reconciliation.
So once again, thank you for coming. Our next Night by the Fire is in June, I think, on the 16th. With the Sherbrooke Marching Girls, which are featured in our showcase inside. So if you can, come along to that. It'll be awesome. Yeah, thank you.